What I want to do is I want to start with almost at the beginning, right? And one of the things that I ask consultants, and as part of this coaching, is to start to think about who you are and what kind of a consultant you want to be and how you can transition to that. The consulting world is awash with people, awash with people, right? There are people that are new to the industry, people that take a course and then put themselves out there as a consultant. You've got experienced people that have been around a long time like me. There's a whole wide variety of consultants, but what we can see in the marketplace is a commonality between them. And I call that an also ran, right? Consultants that are positioning themselves just like everybody else, and therefore they are an also ran. What I spent a lot of time doing is understanding who I am, what my strengths are, and what can differentiate me from the rest of the marketplace so that people like you will engage with me, and allow me to be able to share my knowledge and experiences with you. What I want to share with you today is a great tool, right? So there are things that I can do and there are things that I can't do. But what I'm going to do today is share with you a tool that I've really benefited from. I'll take 5-10 minutes and just show you through it. And if it's something that you benefit from, great. And people that watch the video, and it's something that I'll be pushing going forward. But I think it's definitely worth time. So I'm just going to share my. Okay, so you can see my window, hopefully.
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. So this is a lady called Deborah. Deborah is a personal branding expert, I would say, for want of a better word. And what Deborah specializes in is taking you through that journey of understanding the power of personal branding. There is a lot of valuable content in here, and there is a lot of insightful content and self-development content that I can't recommend highly enough. This is a course that I have taken with her. It's an online course that we can take in our own time. She does offer, as everybody does, she offers one-to-one consulting. But for me, I have had the most value out of this particular course. The reason that I value it not only is the content, which I just want to share with you, and some of the things that you can think about when you're starting your journey as a consultant, when you're thinking about going into consultancy on your own, it's the price, right? I think she's doing this online course for around about £200-300, which for me is a no-brainer, right? When we're buying tools and we're buying technology through our organization, we get the tax offset against it. You know, £200-300 in real terms is hardly anything. So what do we get, and what is it that Deborah can do? This online course is covering things that we think that we might know. Now, some of the things that she's going through, we will know, but especially if you're early in your career, if it's something that you've done and you've been predominantly in corporate, I think that there are some great lessons in here to be learned, and there are some great exercises around personal introspection and personal self-development. So you can see that I've gone through that. What I like about it, and again, I can take you through this, but I can't take you through it in the way that she can, is about understanding the power of branding, about understanding the power of personal branding, about how branding can differentiate us from our competitors, about what a brand is, and about building those positive habits. We go through in the course with her about understanding what our values are, right? Our values may be different to other consultants' values, and those values may differentiate us. She does a great section on communication. Again, there are things within here that I think are pure gold. You know, there are things in here that I knew, but I didn't, that I took for granted. But the way that she sets them out, the way that we present ourselves, the consistency in about how we present ourselves, the way that we dress, the way that we talk, the way that we communicate, whether or not that is consistent across our social media platforms and our various engagements. So I've given you a good example today, right? We have a consultant that wants to engage with me today, but they want to use a Gmail account. right? So they want to engage with me on a Gmail account. What is that telling me if they're engaging with me on a personal Hotmail, Gmail, Outlook account? In terms of their approach to not turning up today, what does that tell me about them? Are they being consistent in who they are? Do I know what their business is? No, because they didn't share it. Do I think that they're acting in a professional manner? No, because they're using a Gmail account. Are they consistent in how they deliver for clients? No, because they can't even turn up for a free seminar. So there are things in terms of how we communicate and how we present ourselves that seem like common sense, but when we spend time and we go through that, it can help us to have insight into maybe how other people perceive us, whether or not they would engage with us going forward, and the positive changes that we can make, right? Every interaction that you make as a consultant is a possibility for a future collaboration. Just because you're having an interaction with me today and you think, oh, well, I'm not going to turn up, the knock-on impact of that would be you do not know who I know, and you do not know 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the line whether or not I might have a requirement for your products or services, or somebody that I know would have a requirement for your products and services. And the interaction and communication and the way that you presented yourself to me, has that had a positive impact? Or has that had a negative impact? Am I likely to recommend you based on my experiences with you, or am I likely to recommend somebody else who I have a more positive experience with? In terms of things like that she touches on are things like body language. And again, I think that these are important topics. Body language, visual impact, the way that we present ourselves are important topics for everybody, including me, but also when we're looking at things like consultancy, where we're presenting ourselves in a professional manner, and we are expecting people to be paying us. Okay, if you're billing out at 12.50 a day, I think is the average at the moment. If somebody's paying us 12.50 a day, does the way that we present ourselves represent a 12.50 value? And even though that can be intangible, right? And we may have a conversation that says, I want to be an authentic me, and I want to wear my AC/DC t-shirt, and I want to wear my ripped jeans because that differentiates me. That's fine in terms of your own personal representation, but you have to consider the client, you have to consider the end person, and is that something that they're going to value and think, do you know what? Yes, I can see that there's 12.50 a value even in the interaction before we get into that level of content. What we do see as well from a consulting point of view are challenges, right? Communication is a challenge, right? A huge number of consultants will come from a technical background. We've got the challenges of isolation within technical roles. If we've come from a coding background, we've come from a technical networking background. We're predominantly tech focused. We predominantly, and as a rule, will avoid social interactions. It's technical things that get us out of bed. It's technical things that excite us. So when we start to move into a world where we have a heavy reliance on human interaction, a heavy reliance on human connection, I think there is great value in understanding things about how body language can influence that. The way that we stand, the way that we talk, the way that we present ourselves can have a massive impact on that. When we're looking at things like listening and listening skills, again, we think we may understand listening. We think we may know that. But as a consultant and as an auditor, you said you want to be an auditor. Listening skills is your number one technical skill. Your ability to listen is your number one technical skill, right? And we ask questions, we think that is going to be the route, yes. But once we've asked the question, giving the time for the person to answer and truly listening to what it is that they're going to say. And there are some great tips and techniques around how you position the questioning to get the best out of the people that you are engaging with. If your concept and your perception right now is I can't be an auditor right now, I would challenge that, and I would say anybody can be an auditor, right? In 27,001, anybody can be an auditor. You will have some challenges when it comes to the Annex A controls. That's absolutely fine, but they can be overcome. And the reason that I say that is all an auditor does is takes a thing and says, this is the thing that you say you do, asks a question, can you show me how you do it? and then listens. That's all you're doing, is listening, right? And what you're looking for is for the client to verify that what it is that they say they do and they've documented that they do, that they actually do. So the power of listening is going to be your go-to in terms of your consulting career. We touched on it when we looked at the module, the session one on implementer, when we discussed about the success factors of a 27001 project. One of the things that I said in there is that it is that case that on many occasions an information security professional will go into an organization with a preset of ideas of what they think security looks like, and they will implement programs of the best security that they can, but the bit that they miss is the conversation with their leadership team and listening to what the leadership team actually wants them to do, and then translating that through their skills into delivering what their leadership wants. The inability to listen is prevalent. And again, I know it happens in every industry. We go in, I know the best about marketing. I'm going to tell you how to do marketing. We need to do all this kind of marketing, but you haven't asked the question. So to summarize, it's about asking, understanding what it is that people want, then listening to the answer and executing based on the answer. And I think you can see that when we do audit. When we get to the audit workshop and we go through that, people like to talk, right? I like to talk. I'm talking now, right? I mean, I ain't going to shut up for about 40 minutes, right? People love the sound of their own voice. But if you go into an audit and you listen, you can get very, very, very valuable information, right? If you've built up a rapport, the way you present yourself, we've gone through things like the visual impact, our body language, you've got people on side, and then we're listening to them, they will tell you things that they probably shouldn't tell you, right? What we often find is, you're going through an audit, once people relax, they'll say, yeah, of course, right? When it comes to putting admin accounts, we follow our structured process, we follow our structured approval process, and everything works well. If you have a rapport with that person, oftentimes they'll go, oh yeah, but do you remember that time when we had to just boost that account for that person because this happened? Do you remember that time that person lost their laptop? Can you remember that time when our senior leadership said, oh, we needed to use a laptop, an iPad, and we don't allow iPads, but we had to do it. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I had to go to their home, I had to install it. Conversation will flow through the power of listening. And Deborah in this gives you some great tips on that. What you also get out of this program is about how to capitalize on that, and then things that I will touch on in consulting about what platforms are we on, what are the right platforms for us. Is LinkedIn, YouTube, where I'm prevalent, TikTok, which I don't even have a presence on, Instagram, and then how we use those platforms and we use that presence to reinforce the message of who we are, of who we want to be, and we get consistency across those platforms. So we don't necessarily just have one platform where we're doing one thing and then it contradicts when we go behind the scenes. What you should see for me, by way of example, is on LinkedIn, I have a professional profile that talks a lot about 27001. I do pepper in there some personal anecdotes and personal elements, but I then back that up with a behind the scenes. If you want to see me really, then you can have a look on my Instagram, and my Instagram then talks through more about my lifestyle and my approach that allows people to get a rounded view of me, right? They can see from a LinkedIn professionally, does it look like I say that I know what I'm talking about? Do I have the expertise for that? Can they see that I've got a little bit of personality through some of the posts that I engage with? If I can use one of my core values, one of my core strengths of humor, if I can use that to engage. But then if they're looking at working with me, how do I know who you are? How do I know what drives you? How do I know whether or not we're going to gel or not? And I back that up with an Instagram account where you can go on and you can see me. Now, we are not in a position where we are going to please everybody, right? Not everybody is going to like us, and that's absolutely fine. But there are people that we are going to align with, and if they can see that, then they're more likely to engage with us. So the benefit that I liked about the program that I've just gone through with Deborah, as you can see, I'm a couple of steps off just completing it right now, but I'm passionate about it. Is it gives you that time to understand a little bit more about who you are and how you present yourself. Is your personal brand, is that something that you have consciously thought about? Is that something that you consciously work on, or is it something that you think is just, it just happens, right? It's just happening just based on who I am?
Actually, so far I didn't think about that yet. Also, it's rather the brand of my company right now, so I'm not really, yeah, in the position to change that much.
Perfect. So, okay, then what I would do is I would definitely encourage you to spend the couple of £100 and go through that.
Mhm.
The power of personal branding, even within a company, even within a corporate role, should not be underestimated. I think your organization on LinkedIn says you have something like 200 employees. You're quite a large organization. In that organization, the rules of consulting are the same rules. They're just in terms of permanence, right? Your bosses, your leadership team, they have a finite pool for promotion. They have a finite pool for salary increase, for bonuses. They have for benefits that go around that, right? So they've got 200 people from a leadership point of view that are all competing for these limited resources to move themselves forward. And the same question I think you should pose to yourself is, how do I differentiate myself? How am I standing out from the crowd? Other than the given, right? It is a given that my technical skill is on point, otherwise they wouldn't employ me, right? It is a given that when they give me work, I get the work done. Performance should be a given. If you're not delivering, if you're not performing, if you don't have the expertise, then you've got some base things that we need to do. But if we're in a world where that is a given, what are the things now that are going to differentiate us? You have the influences of the company that you're in, no doubt about that, right? No doubt about that. If your culture is that everybody wears formal attire, suits, formal dress, then that is something that is going to influence how you come across, and you're going to have limitations on your maneuverability in that. But you can then still consider how you're presenting yourself within the constraints of that suit. What kind of suit do I wear? What kind of colors do I wear? How fresh is it? How up to date is it? Am I wearing a suit from when I was at university, or my old wedding suit? What is it? How am I presenting myself in an organization? So my feedback to you today would be, start this journey, and whether or not you buy a course or not is entirely up to you. There's a lot of free resources on this, but I would start to think about, what are my core values? What is it that I stand for? What do I want to be known for? And then how can I present myself in a way that will get me there? Tips and advices. I've spent a lot of time. You see, and I've wavered. I'll grant you. I created the persona of the ISO 27001 Ninja. The reason that I wanted to do that is I wanted to differentiate myself in the marketplace, right? I wanted to give people a hook. I knew that it would upset certain people within the tech industry. Oh, you call yourself a guru, you call yourself a ninja, it will never work. It works okay for me, right? But I put thought in that. I put reasoning into why I did that. And then I backed that up, which I'm not going to talk about today with the limited time we've got, into a company branding. I've just spent a lot of time here talking about personal branding. Your takeaway today is to have a look at personal branding. But I then took that concept to corporate branding, to my company. And you've spent time on my website. You've seen my YouTube videos, the covers for my videos. There's a lot of money and effort and time that went into thinking about that. Things like fonts, things like colors, things like the images, things like getting professional videos. Now, the way and the reason that I did that is I want to translate my core values. I want to translate out to people. Do you look at that and see somebody who looks engaging, who looks fun, who looks genuine? Does it represent a level of expertise? What I see within the market, and I talked at the beginning about also rans, is that people will not invest. They won't invest in their personal brand. Fine. But the bare minimum is in your corporate brand. And I'm sure you've done this, where you go onto consultant websites and they're appalling, right? They're absolutely appalling. Now, I talked in terms of consistency of message, right? If I want to engage with you, probably the first thing I do is I'm going to have a look at your website. If your website is a Wix.com website, if your website is peppered with imagery that is stock imagery, I mean, that is just offensive, right? the number of consultancy firms that just have the stock shutter point photographs built within it. What am I saying? What am I saying to my potential client? How am I going to get my client to click through to me if I just look like everybody else? Or at worst, I look worse than everybody else. If the last updated on my website is 2018, if I'm referring standards that don't exist, if it's never been touched, if it doesn't look the same, if the color scheme is wrong, I haven't invested either in understanding the power of color and how color can influence people. If I haven't done that, then I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to move forward, right? I'm just going to be an also ran. So I think what I would be saying to you is it isn't appropriate to you right now, right? As it stands right now for you, you rely on your corporate branding. It's very good. I'm looking at your website. I like it. And your team has spent a lot of time on that, right? What they've done is they've produced a very clean website. They've gone for color schemes. I like their color schemes because they match mine.
Yours, yeah.
They match mine, right? They match mine. But again, we put thought into that. Why did we go for the green we went for? We went for the green because green is about positivity. Why did we go for the hue that we went for? Because it stands out. So if I generate a post with a cover image on it, I will stand out in your feed because of the brightness, the luminosity of the green that I use, and your company will be doing exactly the same. It's about differentiating and standing out from the crowd and demonstrating that experience. Your company has taken a lot of time to declutter. I like it, right? It's very, very clean. It's very white, very simple. The font that you use, the thought processes has gone into that, how you're structuring your headings, etc. So again, I'm not touching on branding and website today, but it is a big part of what we do, and it should build from personal branding. We start with personal branding because it's who we are. Then we're looking at our website and saying, how does our website reflect that personal brand so they work together consistently? Then how does my social media presence back up and reflect both of those? So they're an extension, there's a flow through. Every touch point that I have with the customer should feel consistent in a consistent manner. I shouldn't get abrupt jarring when suddenly I go to your website and you've not done anything with it, and it's filling this form. You haven't even got the basics of a privacy notice. You haven't got in the cookie banners or any other required elements around that. So that's in terms of today's session. I'm not going to go much further than that. These sessions are normally about 40 minutes. Hopefully a little bit of value. I hear what you say when you say that you're in a full-time role and maybe it's not something to think about right now, but I just want to re-emphasize personal branding in a permanent role. It's what got me a career within GE and Santander for over a decade, was how I presented myself in my corporate role. It accelerated me through my career progression. It got me senior leadership roles at a very, very, very young age, and it stood me in good stead because nobody else was doing it. Everybody else was saying, well, I get paid, I'm just going to do my job, it's a 9-to-5 job, who cares if I'm wearing my AC/DC t-shirt, who cares if I'm wearing jeans, I don't shave, my hair's all a mess. I was standing out from the crowd, getting noticed by senior leadership, getting noticed by senior management, and that then boosting my career, and I was benefiting off of the back of that.
That's really valuable content, and actually you can see that you put that much thought in your website and presence. When I saw your website the first time, I had the impression like you're really, like in Big Four, for example, you have those marketing slides. I always say we can do everything.
Yes.
And in your website, I had the impression that you're really genius and transparent. And you would, for example, say if you are not able to do something, to deliver something, in contrast to Big Four, for example, they would always say, yeah, we are experts in this. And yeah, that's a really positive thing that struck me about your website and in general your presence.
Thank you, always. When we get more time, we move on to one of the other sessions. What I'm going to talk about, or what I would share with you, is about niche, about niching. For me, 27001 is my niche. It isn't the only thing I can do. Clearly, I'm a professional of over 30 years, but presenting that niche versus do you want to be a consultant that offers everything? I take, for example, your website, no issue with it. You're large enough to be able to do it, but you do consulting, you do AI, you do tech infrastructure, you do so many different things that can work in your favor, but can have detriment in a small consulting business where the tendency is to say, we do everything. which clearly you can't do,
Exactly,
and then never going back and saying, no, actually that isn't something I can do. And you are right. If I can't do it, which 9 times out of 10, if I can't do it, but I know somebody through 30 years in industry that can, and I can give you options, because I have no dog in the race, I'll give you the options of the best 3 people I know, and hopefully they will. So I can signpost you, right? And that finishing off, that comes back to the interaction with the individual that chose not to come today, is that extended network. When people say, do you do GDPR? Absolutely no, I don't. Do I know people that do? Yes, I do. I've got 3 on the books right now. I'm not going to name them. And I would put you in touch with them because I've had positive interaction with them, and all the things that I've talked about, personal branding, their way to present themselves, corporate branding, even though they're only a small business, everything is on point, and I know that they will do a good job for you, right? So yeah, the power of networking and the power of branding.
True.
Excellent. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
I'm not sure if this is the last. Maybe I've got one more consulting session next week if you're on it, and then I'll be taking a move and seeing. Do you think that this is content? I'll take your feedback, right? Do you think that this is content that is worth paying for?
For me, yeah, 100% sure. I already made entry in my to-do list that I will check out Deborah's course, for example. And yeah, you go quite deep into the stuff. So for me, it's really valuable. Yeah.
Perfect. If I know I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that Deborah says that I always took away is, we don't worry about how many likes we get. We don't get how many clicks we get. All we try every day is to help one person. If I can help one person every day, I've achieved my goal.
That's
so
a nice
hopefully
mindset.
Hopefully today I've helped you, and my day is done.
You did. You can relax for the rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, man. I will speak to you again. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Then see you next time. Goodbye.